Hi, this is a film of summarising my trip from Bournemouth to Istanbul using an Interrail pass in the summer of 2017. I was 54 years old during this time I was doing this trip, and it's the first time I've used an Interrail pass, but I have been on the European rail network before. So what I'll do with the film is I'll put some tips in writing just to help people out, particularly older Interrailers, although I did meet plenty of young people doing it, and there was a steady stream of young people interrailing at all the major stations I went to. And I'll put in the approximate costs as well, and the advantages of using an Interrail pass against pre-booking individual parts of the trip. So I took the 10 to 9 train to Reading, and then I switched at Reading and went to London Paddington. This is because I wanted to go on the low-level line on the Circle line to St Pancras rather than from Waterloo going deep carrying my rucksack. So the next tip is this one about the UK leg being included in the Interrail pass, which is really useful. So going up from Bournemouth to London costs about £55–60 off peak one way, so there's a real saving there. This is the bridge across the KOLN. They've just kind of like millions of padlocks here, and there's the magnificent cathedral, which is really why I wanted to stay the night in Cologne. It's magnificent, and the climb up was, well, it's epic. I spent the morning in Cologne to see the cathedral, and then I got a lunchtime train to Hamburg. Most of the trains to Hamburg you have to switch, but this train was just a normal express, and it was a direct train, which was about 4 hours long. Now the reservations, I had to reserve everything except the trains in Germany. But even then I'd probably recommend that you book the long distance express trains because they were pretty busy. Although I got a seat, I probably didn't get my favourite seat. And so I think it's well worth paying a few pounds extra just to have a reservation on those trains as well. So you probably guessed I'm going the long way to Istanbul because I'm going through northern Germany, a place that I've never been to before. So this is the beauty of the Interrail pass. You could do these exotic journeys rather than the traditional route via Vienna and Budapest. I did use the Interrail website and their booking service for some of the trips, and they're unavoidable costs, I'm afraid. So I had to get some couchettes as well. So you're probably looking for this trip, I paid probably £100 on top of my Interrail pass. Well, this is one of the reasons why I came to Hamburg, to come and see the Miniature Wonderland in Hamburg, which is one of the most popular tourist attractions in Germany. I've never been to northern Germany before, so I'd even thought about flying to Hamburg for the day, come and see this museum and then fly home, but I never did it. So I'm glad I did it the way I've done it as a part of this trip, because this place is absolutely fantastic. I went for about an hour. I thought I'd be there for about an hour. I pre-booked it, of course, because you need to pre-book it just to make sure you get a place. And I stayed 2.5 hours, and I was just totally entranced by it. And I put a longer film on YouTube already with footage from this as well. This tip I really do recommend because I bought the tickets the Christmas before I went in the summer, and at that point it was 20% cheaper than the standard price. So I go back quite regularly to have a look at the prices, and I notice they do deals now and again. So the last one I saw was 15%, which is still a very good deal. And I bought the 22-day continuous ticket. It was a close run thing between, I think, the 15-day over a month ticket. But I opted for the 22 days continuously. So I paid about £360, which I think is outstanding value, considering it gets me all the way from Bournemouth to London as well. It was a really good value. So taking over the overall cost from going to Bournemouth to Istanbul, the Interrail pass was about £360. I probably paid just over £100 in couchettes and reservations. I paid £80 for a flight back on Turkish Airlines, which was very good. So I think overall it was about £600, €600 to go all the way from Bournemouth to Istanbul via all the places I visited, and then fly back and then get back to Bournemouth from London, all inclusive. So £600, that's a really good deal as far as I'm concerned. So I could have gone to all these places on a long weekend break, but I don't usually do that style of travelling because it costs quite a lot of money just to get out there, to park the car at the airport, or to get up to London, Heathrow or Gatwick. It just, the costs mount up. So the train way of doing things is a lot easier. And taking the car, to give you an idea how much it costs me now to go, when I went in 2015 to Lyon and the French Alps and Turin, and I took the car with my bike across the channel, that cost me probably getting close to £800, and that's including, okay, that's including 2 nights hotels stopping over. But when you add in all the petrol and the tolls and the ferry costs, you know, it's a fair amount of money to do it. But at least I've got a car. Now the only thing wrong with the Interrail pass is I didn't have my bike with me, so I had to focus the trip on the sites, the cities I was visiting. But that was okay. I planned the trip deliberately to go to places which by and large I've never been to before. So the only places I've been to Cologne, but I'd only switched trains years ago, and I've been to Budapest a few times. But that's it. All these places were new to me, and I was excited to come and see them and explore them. So this is my first time in Poland. So I've always wanted to visit Poland. The train journey from Berlin to Warsaw is 6 hours, so it's a very flat ride. The days I were in Poland, beautiful days, very nice. Always wanted to go to Krakow here, so I got my chance to go and visit Krakow. As I was in the Krakow area, I decided I should go and visit Auschwitz here. It's one of those places, I've always been interested in history and I always should have gone, so this is my chance to go and visit Auschwitz. This is Auschwitz I, the old army barracks, the original camp. This you have to book and pay a fee. The tour is excellent. I have to say the tour is really good. In Auschwitz I you have to go with the tour because it's quite a lot of it is indoors in very narrow corridors, so they need to keep it organised. About a mile away is Auschwitz II, Auschwitz-Birkenau, the main camp. And it's a sobering experience. When you get the bus between the two, and the first time I saw it, I was just amazed by the size of it. It just goes off into the distance. It's huge, but as the guide said, when there's 100,000 people here, it's very small. As of today, I haven't done a film of Auschwitz yet, but I will do it because it's very interesting. It's a sobering experience and well worth doing. And here we are in the beautiful city of Budapest. I was able to pick up the Krakow-Budapest night express at Auschwitz. The train leaves just before midnight last summer, so it gets into Budapest about 8 o'clock the next morning. I have friends here, so I met up with them, and I've been to Budapest before. You can see how, and I was very lucky in this last trip. It was beautiful weather, very hot, but you see the spectacular Danube, which is the centrepiece of Budapest. So the next leg was 16 hours on the Budapest to BRASOV in Romania express, which was an overnight train again, had a couchette booked. I would say all the trains in Eastern Europe were comfortable, they were functional, and they were all on time. I have to say they were all on time. Now the trains are slow in Eastern Europe. They were going, when I woke up in Western Romania, they were going at a sedate 40 miles an hour. I'm just going to diverge for a moment because this is the TRANSFAGARAN highway. This is what Jeremy Clarkson called the best drive in the world, so I rented a car to do this drive through the mountains. And it's absolutely rollicking. It's well worth doing. And I've put it on a separate film already, so you can see this film. This is the key section. This is coming from the northern side, and you can see it's just basically like a Scare Electrics track, and it's really. I went on it a beautiful day, so it's a lot of fun to drive, but quite tiring. I was out all day doing this drive, all the way from Brasov, and a round trip, and it took me all day to get round. So going back to the trains, the other thing I would point out is there are border crossings, because once you go out of Hungary, you're leaving the EU, the train stops to be checked on both sides of the borders, and that's all the way to Turkey. And it's quite a long experience. And these crossings take place at night, because I was basically travelling at night time, except when I went from Romania into Bulgaria, which was in the late afternoon, which I put on the film, which is going across the bridge on the Danube, which is spectacular. I would also point out that when you go into Turkey, you need a visa, which you can get online. But that you have to get at Turkey when you go across into Turkey on the Turkish side. You have to get off the train and you have to present it all in their office, which is a bit of a pain because it's 4 a.m. in the morning. Anyway, this is the final stage, leaving Bucharest on the express to Istanbul. Now, part of the train goes to Istanbul. One coach goes to Istanbul. Literally, only 4 of us went in that coach, and most of the train goes to Sofia, and some of it goes to Thessaloniki in Greece. Now the planning, this was the only part which I couldn't book in the UK or on the internet, and I had to do it on trust of a very good website, the Man in Seat 61, which is very useful, and it kind of like told me that there was a train going direct from Bucharest to Istanbul, but it wasn't definitive, and I couldn't confirm it anywhere else. But when I arrived at Brasov in Romania, there was an international ticket office, they spoke English, and I had a reservation within 5 minutes. So it was all sorted, it was really useful. So planning the trip is a lot of fun. The Man in Seat 61 is a very interesting website. It has a lot of detail and advice and links to good websites. So it was very helpful. So the 4 of us took 21 hours to get to Istanbul, and actually it stops about 20 kilometers outside the city centre because the original Sakirchi station has closed. It's still there, but it's not used as a railway station. And this is HALKALI, where we caught a bus into central Istanbul. It's my first time in Istanbul, and that first afternoon was spectacular. So the film gives you a bit of a flavour of what it was like to see central Istanbul for the first time. I would say it's one of the great cities of the world. It was fabulous. Anyway, I finished up in Istanbul for a few days, and I flew back after about 4 days back to London Heathrow. I picked up a train from Heathrow to Hayes, and then I picked up another one to Reading, and then I picked up the Bournemouth train and I got home. So I started Istanbul at breakfast time, and I was back in Bournemouth by 7:30 in the evening. So I went from one side of Europe to the other. I'm counting Bournemouth to Istanbul as technically doing that. I've been across America before, so I'm thinking about doing Asia in a couple of years' time, maybe the Trans-Siberian Railway. So I really enjoyed this trip. I've enjoyed watching some of the other Interrail videos and what other people did. So I really do recommend it. It's a very useful way of getting across. Driving to Eastern Europe from the UK, it's quite far. It's doable, but I didn't see any British cars in Romania or Bulgaria. So I think the train is the best way to do it. So I hope you enjoyed this video. Hope you found it interesting, and I'll sign off and I'll tell you about my next one. I'm putting some shorter films on, so I'm gradually doing that. So I hope you enjoyed this film.